this lunch is just to look at some business ethics and ways to help ourselves and to help our associates navigate through this community known as the business world. South Florida is a tough place to do business. I did it for 25 years. Now I run a church that has 1,000 people in it that are running a business of some type or another. So instead of working with just a few, I'm working with a lot of people. So enjoy doing it. Today we're going to look at ourselves, spend some time looking at ourselves individually. So as I talk about these things, your first idea will be to point to someone else and think of someone else, your boss, your coworker, someone downline, someone upline, your husband, your wife, your adult kids. You're going to be pointing fingers, but I'd like you to just kind of point your fingers to yourself and kind of see what this means for you. And we're talking about habits today, and I have a sheet in front of you, so if you like taking notes, you're welcome to do that. But everybody has habits. There's good habits and there's bad habits. And I love reading books about companies. And so many companies lose their focus because they develop bad habits. The first car I ever owned was a 1979 Ford LTD. Did anybody ever own an LTD? It is among the worst cars ever made. And I thought I had a lemon. And when I took it back, I realized it was the entire series of cars that were that way, that would stall in third gear. That I spent the extra bucks to put a Landau roof on it, you know, the vinyl roof. So, see, the one who had it's laughing. They know what happens. When you're driving down the road, the air would get underneath it and it'd become a bubble. And so people were pointing at me like this. So I'd stop the car. Usually it's with a tire, right? People go, oh, your tire's low. They're pointing up. I'd stop the car. The air would go down. By the time you get out, you couldn't see anything wrong. I drove that car for months, not knowing that I just looked like a little bubble going down the street. Well, and Ford, which was known as a very high-quality car, very simple back in the 30s and 40s, simple car, but it had quality, it would run, began the name Fix or Repair Daily. That is, now it's job one, and they regrouped. They regrouped with the F-Series, and they regrouped with minivans, and they regrouped with the Suburbans, not Suburbans, but the SUVs and the Explorers and all, and they've done great. But in the 1970s, it was the worst. Another company that lost its way because of bad habits is one we wouldn't think of, which is Disney. Think of a Disney Productions. Think of a movie made in the 1970s by Disney. They're just non-existent. I mean, I think it was The Rescuers or, you know, The Fox and the Hound. They made great movies in the 60s, and by 1985, they almost shut the doors. And they got in a room together and said, we have to change our habits. And out of that came The Little Mermaid. Out of that came the Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King. Then they bought some talent called Pixar and Toy Story. And all the rest is history because they saw their bad habits, they changed their bad habits, moved them into good habits. I got some people here that work for Microsoft. They developed some bad habits in the 1990s, and Nokia and Samsung and others started taking over. They had to change their habits. McDonald's is in a remake right now. McDonald's developed some bad habits, and Subway has passed them. And it's an amazing thing. If you look at the commercials of McDonald's now, you're still wondering, who are they? They haven't quite found themselves because they're trying to change their habits. Well, we as people have habits, and we as individuals have to look. We all have habits. The question is, are they good habits or bad habits? I'm going to look at these, and I'm going to apply them very much to business today, but they apply in your home, your personal life, your family life, your community life as well. Let me give you two motivators for good habits. Two main motivators for good habits. And we know this, but we don't really put it in its terms. But the first one, a first motivator, is to prevent pain. We have habits in our lives to prevent pain. Let me give you a good business one. One of them would be to be at work on time. That is a good habit. Why do you get to work on time? If you're like me, I was taught that if you can't be on time, be 5 minutes early. But
for most people, it's a habit you have to have. Why? So that you keep your job and you are known for being timely. It doesn't mean you're a good worker. It doesn't mean you're smart at what you do. It doesn't mean you can produce what you need to produce. It means nothing except you have the habit of being on time. But if you don't have that habit, you will be fired. So you are on time to work because it prevents pain. Most of us have a morning routine. The first hour of the morning, we do the exact same thing, most people in the world. Why? It's pretty much to prevent pain. You don't have to think about it. You got to get the kids to school. You got to do this. Some of you got to make lunches for tomorrow. You develop all these habits to prevent the pain of it 7 in the morning or 6 or whenever you get up to having to think through all that. You've developed the habits. But it, again, doesn't make you a great mother, a great father, a great worker because of what you do the first hour. But if you don't do it, then bad things happen. So it just gets you kind of to zero. And what's interesting is we teach our children, we teach our workers to do all these habits that prevent pain, thinking that that's going to help them succeed. In reality, that only helps them get to the batter's box. That only helps them to get to the game. It doesn't help them beyond that, because the second main motivator, and this is the one we rarely talk about, is the motivation for gain. So prevent pain and gain. Now here I'm not talking about money. I mean, that is a gain, but think about all the things you do. And the idea here is not just to reduce stress, but to build creativity, to build innovation, to have good habits that take you to the next level. Because so many of us work on habits that just get us to the front door. And that's great. We teach our kids how to get to that interview, how to do the first interview. We've got to move beyond that so that we can gain because of the good habits we have. And I believe, by the way, that good habits are a reflection of your character. Habits and character walk hand in hand. Now, yes, we can have habits and have bad character, good habits, because you can train yourself. But in the long run, you who are bosses know that someone who has good habits has good character. Those who have bad habits have character that's tough. I mean, we know this. It's interesting. Chick-fil-A, we bring them in sometimes, some of their trainers and the head of training. He says, I got over 100,000 people to work for us. We do not have time to teach them character. They got to come to us with character. We'll train them on how to work the system, how to run everything, but if they don't come with good character, we're not their mothers and fathers. And I kind of brush against that personally, but I only have 25 people that work for me. I don't have 100,000 people that work for me. So they don't even work. They want to hire, they say they don't always do it, but they hire for good character, hire for good habits, people who prevent pain and can provide gain for their company, and then they train them on the particulars. Very interesting. Now let me ask you a question. Let's get a little participation here. When the way you respond in life, there are 3 ways that people respond in life, and it develops into habits. 3 simple ways, and I've done this all over the world. I speak all over the world, and it's pretty much, unless you're in an academic setting, which is kind of, those of you that work in it's kind of a different world. Outside of that, it's pretty much a third, a third, a third. So in this room, I'm going to see if it's true. When you see something, or hear something, or have to interact something, 3 basic responses can occur. One is feeling, the other is thinking, the other is doing. So my question is, are you a feeler, a thinker, or a doer? As your primary go-to response. So let me ask, those who are feelers, raise your hand. If you're a feeler, raise your hand. Come on, don't be embarrassed. I'm raising my hand. My kids love to get, have you ever seen those P&G Moms YouTube things? You know, they want to see how long those 4-minute YouTubes are before I cry. You know, I mean, it's just hilarious. I do cry in Toy Story 3. I do, you know, they just love, I'm a feeler. So how many feelers are there? Raise your hand. There we go. See, we got a few more that aren't afraid, because you can be 6'6" and be a feeler. Okay. How many of you are thinkers? Right? You know, it's the first thing, thinkers. Good. Okay, great. And how many are doers? There we go. We got a bunch. Good. And literally, it's probably a third, a third, a third. Now, what's interesting is if you are a thinker, let's start with doers. If you are a doer, you're going to walk out of here today and go, what am I going to do with all this stuff he just talked about? I mean, you use the words doing in it, right? What am I going to do about this? If you're a feeler, you're going to talk to the person next to you and go, what'd you feel about today? How'd you feel about what he said? How'd you feel about this, right? And if you are a thinker, what'd you think about today? You use the words that even you respond with. Now, it's just a normal in life. What's interesting is, in the Hebrew scriptures, in the Christian scriptures of the Old Testament, God, or Moses, referred to God by saying this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, feeling, with all your mind, thinking, and with all your strength. Way back, 3,500 years ago, they were even thinking in these terms. Even today, think of The Wizard of Oz. We all saw The Wizard of Oz as kids, right? It was Dorothy and 3 guys going to the Emerald City to find something. Dorothy wanted to go to Kansas, but what did the 3 guys want? What did the Tin Man want? A heart. What did the Scarecrow want? A brain to think. And what did the Lion want? Courage for what? To be and do the king of the jungle. Even in our kids' stories, even in biblical stories, we all understand that it's thinking, doing, feeling. Now in habits and developing habits, we have to have all 3. See, it's not enough to have just one. You can be hired because you are a great thinker for a job, or because you are a great doer for the job. But as a human being, you have to have all 3. So today, I want to walk through those 3 and then wrap it with a 4th one. I think the 4 qualities of developing good habits. Let's do it. So first of all, and I'm kind of doing it backwards, or I guess there's no right or wrong to call someone who does something backwards. I didn't mean that. If you're the doer, I'm going to start with doers, okay? What I do. These are the actions you take in life. And doers are not the only ones that take action. We all take action. We are all doers individually. So as a habit, think about preventing pain and gain. Now let me give you an example. One would be time. Again, time. You're on time to work. You're on time when you call home. You're on time to your kid's soccer game. You're on time to the ballet for your daughter. You're on time. That's preventing pain. We had a ballet here of some children just this weekend over here. And one girl was sitting in a corner crying because her dad was not timely. And he missed her part of the play because it's only 4 minutes long, right? And he goes, he missed it. He got a lot of pain, right, for missing it. But see, that's not the only thing. Timeliness, there's more to the timeliness than just being on time. There's the issue of timing. See, timing is gain. I come out of the real estate background. What are the 3 most important things in real estate? That, to me, is false. Location, location, location. Everyone will tell you that. That is not true. It's timing, timing, timing. It's when you own that property. It's the timing of, oh yeah, you need good location. But it's interesting, the largest real estate company in Florida, who was a competitor of mine, a buddy of mine, he owns the largest privately held real estate company, owns it all. He's down in Miami, and he owned a dog of a property in Broward County. It was so bad, I used to laugh at him over it. We get together, and this guy's brilliant. I don't know, he's got, 200 offices or something. I mean, he's way over me in real estate, but he had this dog of a property. No location, nothing about it. Then 2007 shows up. And real estate's going like this. And the real estate sales business, those of you who are in it, even went worse than the real estate. He went from being up here down to here, and he still had 200 offices, 200 rent checks, 200, like 500 employees, plus a couple thousand agents. It gets old. He called me up, I think it was 2:09 or 2:10. He called me up, he said, Bill, I sold the dog and it saved my business. Timing. The timing of selling the dog property saved his entire business. They're back on their feet, they're doing great. We talk every once in a while, but it was timing. So much of us, when it comes to time, we only think of timeliness. But the reality is, if you can develop timing, the habit of good timing is incredible. Anthony and I were talking today, just the issue of people who are hurting. A timely call, a timely note is unbelievable how far that goes if you just use timing. My father is here, and he's in real estate, been in it for 60 years, so he's just great. He used to help kids go to college. He would pay for non-relatives to go to college. It was an amazing thing. So one day, a friend of mine who is a good friend up in Delray, he said, your dad put me through college. And he's like 40-some years old now, and I said, wow, I didn't know that. So I said, Dad, did you put so-and-so through college later? He said, oh, no, I didn't do anything like that. I knew most of the people because they were mostly my friends he helped put through college. It was a great gift my dad had of doing that. So I went back to my buddy, and I said, next time I saw him, I said, my dad didn't put you through college because he would remember. That's expensive. He would remember it. He goes, well, let me tell you the story. He said, and he's from the Caribbean. He came up, was at FAU, had a bill due, couldn't pay it. My dad sent him $500. $500 doesn't put you through 4 years at FAU, even back 20 years ago, especially as an international student, you're paying those triple rates. And I said, $500? That doesn't put you through college. He goes, it put me through college because it took me over the hump. And your father's timing put it over. Now think about it. He was able then to get a second job. He was able to get some scholarships at that point. He graduated and, in fact, worked at FAU for many years and is doing some other things. What's the point here? It's not how much you have, whether it's your resources, your intellect, your things. It's what you do with it. And developing timing is an incredible habit to do. And you go, how do I develop it? I believe you just work it. You do it. When in doubt, do it. You who are doers, do it. Make the call. Give the gift. Help someone else. And all of a sudden, and in your companies, of course, it's an incredible opportunity of creativity and innovation. Number 2, our time's slipping by very fast. The second one is what I feel. The habits of the heart. This is important because we always teach. I do a lot of work in prisons. I love working in prisons. One of the things that gets men, especially, I work with men in prison, one of the things that gets men in prison is anger. It's not the only thing that gets them in prison, but one of the top things that gets them in prison is anger. And one of the things that prisons do is they put people through anger management. And I go down, and we work at some prisons down in Fort Lauderdale and some other places, and I say, it is not enough just to get rid of anger. That is preventing pain. But let me tell you, you need to get rid of anger. You need to get rid of those negative emotions that you have. If you have habits of rage, of anger, of being aloof, you can name any of those negative things. You got to get rid of them. But what are the things that gain you in your feeling capacity? Things like love, compassion, generosity, having a spirit of generosity. A couple of days ago, last week, there's a worker at NCCI. Does anybody work at NCCI here? Okay, I'm going to say something about NCCI. They're one of our great companies here in this city. So a good friend of mine has muscular dystrophy. I'm a feeler, I cry. Got to get over it, doers. He has muscular dystrophy. From here up, one of the smartest human beings ever. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Number 2 ranked amateur chess player in the world. I mean, it's unbelievable. Teaching me, that's a whole nother story, teaching me chess. So here down, nothing. He's in one of those things that he can just barely move. We'd have lunch every other week, and a great relationship, member of our church, one of the smartest guys out in a very smart company. Actuaries are like off the charts smart. Got fluid in the lungs, got a virus, went into the hospital. I'm visiting him in ICU, and there is a vigil by some people at NCCI outside. In fact, I love when we get kicked out of a hospital. Those of you that work at the hospital, I'm sorry. I love when people come to the hospital because so many people, nobody comes to them. So they came. And so I'm praying with him, and he died. He died Saturday morning, just 5 days ago. 48, tragic. So the funeral, right here next door, right in the chapel behind me. 150 NCCI employees show up. Do you know what that did to his family? His daughter, who's 16, his brother. Do you know what that did? Them coming and positively showing feeling. Oh, they could send a note, he was a great worker, and they all did that and shook hands. But to positively come and show compassion in a corporate setting was just, they said we shut down some of the divisions this afternoon so we could all be here. That's what I'm talking about, not just the negative, not being angry, not being bad, having those good habits, but having positive good habits that provide gain, not for yourself only, but for others. Number 3, what I think, the habits of the mind. This is important because in the heart and in the mind is where this kind of all begins. And in the mind, as a man thinks, so is he. The book of Proverbs says, as a person thinks, so are you. So thinking is important. David Novak, the CEO and chairman of Yum Brands, Yum is Pizza Hut, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Taco Bell. He has a great book. I'll give you the name, Taking People With You. If you want to read a good business book, it's great. He tells a story of 2 different shoe companies, it's just an apocryphal story, 2 shoe companies going to Africa to open a market in Africa. And they both go to the same place. I go to Africa a lot, so I love Africa. They go and they find out that people are not wearing shoes. So the first guy with the first company goes, no one's wearing shoes. I'm coming back home. There's no market for shoes. The second guy says, no one's wearing shoes, double the order, everyone needs them. See the difference in the thinking? You both see the situation, and one looks at it and goes, I can't change it, there's nothing I can do. You just think very poorly about the situation. Another one looks at it and sees the opportunity. The one prevents pain, the other one gain. You have to look, you thinkers, and all of us, we have to think through the issues and think through how you can advance in your own life, in the life of your families, and in the life of your companies. This is huge to do. In the prevent pain part of this, last month I talked about pride and arrogance. We all hate proud people and arrogant people. They think they're better than they are, right? What does pride mean? You think more highly of yourself than you ought to think, right? Well, you gotta do away with that. But that's the preventing pain. Who wants to be around a real proud person, a real arrogant person? But the gain part of that is creativity, innovation, team effort, give others the credit, embrace the future. These kind of things that were important to talk about. If you're so worried about yourself and you stop the pride, that's good. But how do you do it in a gaining way? And so as we think about it, it's real easy to do it. We've got those who are doers, those who are feelers, and those who are thinkers. And each of us have to do all 3. Now let me close this with the last one. The last one has to do with what you believe. What you believe. And this takes us to the bigger picture. The bigger picture. And I want to explain this by telling a story, a very true story that happened to me and my father a couple of years ago when I was still in real estate. He still is. I sold a piece of real estate up in Martin County. Martin County's north of us, just south of Stewart, in a little place called Hobe Sound in the west side. It was 1989, 1990. sold a tract of land that was a mile long by half a mile. It's called a half section. And before, a few years ago, there was not Google Earth. So for you younger people, we had to figure out how to get an aerial picture of this thing. The buyer wanted to see it from the sky. And so the only way to do it back then was you had to do it by a helicopter. So I thought, where am I going to get a helicopter? So I call around. The closest helicopter back then was Fort Lauderdale Exec. So I had to hire the helicopter from Fort Lauderdale Exec, hire a photographer, 100 miles, take the photos, 100 miles back. I said, I can't afford this. I just couldn't do it. The guy says, I'm not buying it unless I see it from the air. So I called the owner who lived up in Melbourne, another 100 miles north. I said, do you have any aerials? He says, no. He says, but I have a little plane. Why don't I come down? We meet halfway by the property. You get in, take all the photos you want, and your guy's got his photos. I said, this is a great idea. So I said, where are we going to meet? He said, well, there's a rural road right there off I-95 at Bridge Road where there's an orange grove. Bring somebody with you and have him drive. He said, I'll do a kind of a roundabout so you know I'm there. Drive down half a mile. I'll land the plane on the road. He can block if any equipment were to come on the road at the time. We'll hop in. We'll go take the pictures, come back, do a flyby. He can drive down the half mile, make sure nobody's there. We'll land the plane. You take off, and I'll just take off. I thought, what a great idea. So I said, Dad, you want to go? I need some video and some stills. Now, again, back then, videos, I got video guys here. Back 25 years ago, videos were in briefcases, and you had the foam, and you actually had the cassettes in them. You remember those big things? So I said, I had to borrow one. I didn't even own one. I had all the cameras. So I had my cameras, I had the briefcase with all the other equipment. I said, Dad, you take the pictures, I'll take the video. So the guy comes, sure enough, I had my buddy, I had a Jeep back then. We stopped the car, drove a half mile, he lands, Dad and I get into the little plane, we take off. I'm taking video of the two lakes and all the cows, and he wanted to develop it, and my dad's snapping away with film. Remember what that was? Just snapping away, click, snap, click, click. We're coming back, we do the flyby, the guy, we see him driving down, and as we're making, it takes about 3 miles, to do the big loop. All of a sudden, there's a helicopter on our left side, Palm Beach County Sheriff Department, right on our wing. And he's pushing us so that we can't land on the little road, kind of getting pushed over to the orange groves. So I said to the owner, little old man, nice guy, said, what are we going to do? He says, I got to try it again. So we come back around, and that helicopter, have you ever seen those Tomahawk kind of helicopters? They are so loud, even when you're in a plane. I mean, the plane's loud, then this helicopter, it's that close. I mean, it was right there. We turn around, come around, and then there's this black, numberless helicopter on our right side. 2 helicopters. I said, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to land the plane. So we land the plane. The Palm Beach County helicopter comes right over us, no higher than this. It is deafening to hear that going. Behind us lands the black helicopter, and out come about 10 guys in full flak suits with rifles pulled. My dad, this elderly man, and me come out of this plane, and I'm holding a briefcase and a bag. This is the honest truth. Right along I-95, right up there at Bridge Road, there's an exit in Martin County, the south exit of Martin County. Everybody stops on I-95. These guys, one guy stands, they all have the helmets with the black, you can't tell who it is. One standing with his gun like this, with the 3 of us there, 4 of us, because the guy driving the car comes out of the Jeep sheepishly. All I could think of is one of these 2 friends of mine, a casual user of drugs. We are in big trouble. They literally took the orange juice boxes we had bought breakfast with. They went into the gas tanks of both my car and they went everywhere. They were pulling up upholstery. They were ripping those 2 things apart. It took 30 minutes. 9 guys doing it, 1 guy guarding us. And we just sat there, stood there, at attention. And I'm looking across the gully towards I-95, and there's all the cars parked. Now let me ask you a question. What were all those cars thinking? That we were drug dealers, that we had flown low across from Nassau, from there, Freeport, came across, landed in a rural place, and and there's the Jeep, there's the plane, here's the briefcase, and here's the bag. I had all the elements of this. At the end, finally, the guy who was obviously the captain comes over and stands right in front of me. And he puts his gun kind of back like they used to do, takes off his helmet, and asks me this question: what on earth are you doing here? What on earth are you doing here? And I said, I'm just taking pictures of 2 lakes and a bunch of cows. And we got a good laugh. They wanted a big bust. But every day since that day, I have remembered, and I see that guy's eyes looking at me saying, what on earth are you doing here? And let me tell you this, it is not getting and spending. Jesus said, what does it profit a person to gain the whole world and lose his soul? And I would encourage you this summer to think about the big picture of your life. There is more than just being a good person of habit, a good person of character. There is a bigger picture here. And I encourage you to think on those things. Thank you.